The topic of today's show is reinvention, and reinvention is so important, especially for children and teen superstars who are looking to redefine their adulthood. Today I have Jason Fox, who is the author of Ricky Nelson Uncovered, which talks about the life of Ricky Nelson. So first of all, I'm fascinated. How did you start writing a book on Ricky Nelson?
It's really interesting, actually, Alicia. I actually was very aware of Rick growing up. Even though I'm obviously a lot younger than he was. I watched Ozzie and Harriet growing up. I watched Nick at Night with my brothers. So when he died in 1985, I was a freshman in high school, and I was very aware of what was going on.
You mentioned Rick Nelson, and a lot of people know him as Ricky Nelson. So tell me a little bit of what you saw as his reinvention.
Exactly. Well, you know, he had already started it. You have to remember, put yourself back in the early to mid 80s, and there was all sorts of artists that were reinventing themselves and being quite successful at it. We're talking about Don Henley, Tina Turner, David Bowie to a certain extent. And Rick was doing the exact same thing. He was just doing it behind the scenes, and he was doing it with my ex-partner. And what's really interesting about that whole process is that, you know, artists want to create new work. And the tough thing for them is that Rick is a perfect example. He had a body of work that was from the Ricky Nelson days, and we were trying to really reinvent the traveling man, really come back to what he was doing at the time before he died, and really tell that story. And that's really the crux of what my book touches on, is being able to show what was happening that last couple of years and that reinvention process.
So Ricky Nelson was reinventing himself, and really musicians, they crave that reinvention. It's really part of the creative process.
It really is. The artistic process itself is just invention. It's creation. And so you can imagine constantly playing the songs that you played when you were 16, 17, 18 years old, and you're in your mid-40s. That's a tough issue for people to survive when you are an artistic being. And so being able to write music and play music in his own home, although that feeds the creative juices, artists need to share that. And that's what he was doing. He was doing it just like everybody else was at that time, and he was doing it quite well. And unfortunately, it was cut short, and that's really the tragedy.
So Jason, what inspired you to write Ricky Nelson Uncovered?
It's really a difficult story to tell. I'm very thankful that I was able to tell the story, and that's really what my hope is to bring us to his previous and existing fans, and really his fan base that were with him all the way through the end.
Talk about the subtitle and what that means.
Yeah, so basically the process was really a 10-year process. Working with his last producer and being so close and having such intimate workings, I was involved with everything from creative to contracts and everything. And so it was really learning the inside story of what was going on when nobody really knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. He was still playing shows, he was still traveling, but nobody really knew what was going on behind the scenes. And that's really what I'm sharing, is what was Rick doing on a day-to-day basis? What was he trying to accomplish? What was in his mind? What was in his heart? What was the goal? What was he trying to move towards? And that's really what the process is for me.
So it was, from your point of view, the truth that you knew.
You always hear it. It's cliche, but you can't make this stuff up. And so that's really where it comes from. It's a story that really needs to be told, really so that people can understand where Rick was at.
So you heard it here. You can't make this stuff up. If you are a Ricky Nelson fan or a Rick Nelson fan, you definitely want to check out Ricky Nelson Uncovered by Jason Fox. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Alicia.